Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, joined now by United States Senator Lindsey Graham, one of the serious people in Washington, D.C. Good morning, Senator. How are you?
Good. The bar is low to be serious.
Well, I know, but you're above it. I want to talk mostly about tanks. But
Okay.
before I begin, I want to talk about a Washington Post column I wrote in Tuesday's paper about Mike Pompeo calling for action vis-a-vis the ungoverned spaces in Mexico from which the cartels are staging. And then Representative Crenshaw and Representative Waltz have filed a draft AUMF in the House to authorize the president to use strikes against these cartels. What do you think, Lindsey Graham, about Pompeo and these guys?
Okay, number one, what's the threat level? It's high, right?
Yes.
The fentanyl coming across the border from Mexico, 14,000 pounds, enough to kill every man, woman, and child on the planet, pretty much. The flow of foreign terrorists coming across the U.S.-Mexican border is real. So the national security threat is real. The threat to order in America is real. So I think the threat level justifies making cartels foreign terrorist organization. And once you become a foreign terrorist organization, then you're just one step away. Well, how do you counter it? So the best outcome is to collaborate with the Mexican government to get a control over this. But I think it's now time for the United States to look at the threats emanating from Mexico with new tools in the toolbox. So I like what I see. I understand what Pompeo is saying. And if a foreign terrorist organization exists in Mexico, then we should have the tools to deal with it.
Would you be one of the co-sponsors of Crenshaw Waltz in the Senate?
Let me look at it, because I think it's an incremental step. So you make the case. Are certain drug cartels basically a terrorist threat by allowing the drugs to come in? What's the threat level? Designate certain groups as a foreign terrorist organization. Once you do that, then you're set the predicate for using whatever force, law enforcement-wise, military force as a last resort, to protect the homeland. The goal is to protect the homeland. And the question for our Mexican friends, are you a threat by the way you govern your country to our homeland? The answer is yes.
All right, now let's move to governing another threat, tanks to Ukraine. I do not know why we do not have Abrams tanks on a carrier to Ukraine today. I know why the Germans are doing this, because the Germans don't want to lose their gas and they're corrupt. But I do not understand why we are screwing around, Senator Graham. What is the situation? They need tanks.
Well, I know why we're screwing around. The Biden administration has yet to embrace the following goal: give Ukraine whatever they need militarily to dislodge the Russians from Ukraine by use of force. We're not talking about invading Russia, but we need ATACMS, a longer distance rocket, to dislodge them from the east. You cannot dislodge the Russians without heavy tanks. It's a World War I-like environment in the east. So it tells me the Biden administration, 11 months into the war, still has not embraced victory for Ukraine.
Yeah, well, they have not. But on the specific, how do you get someone like their number 3 is a lefty? How do you get someone at the Pentagon do they return your calls? This is nuts. Send them 20 tanks and they'll end up with 400 from Poland and Germany.
If you send a platoon of tanks, the Challenger tank as a rifled barrel is probably not the best fit, but the British sent the tanks to lead from the front to allow others to cover to give tanks. The United States argument about the Abrams tanks is somewhat technically correct, but everything we've given the Ukrainians, they've been able to master pretty quickly. The aversion to giving tanks by the United States is going to fall here, I hope. It's coming from the Pentagon. Milley has been very reluctant, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, to embrace an all-in strategy to allow Ukraine to expel the Russians. They're afraid of the bluster coming from Putin. The Biden administration is still reluctant to cross Putin. I think it's a huge mistake. If we give in to Putin's threat, we'll never get this right.
Let me turn now to NATO, Senator Graham. Turkey is giving trouble to Sweden and Finland in one of the most self-inflicted foot shots I have ever seen. Now, Erdogan's got an election in May. Is that what this is about? Just after May it'll happen? Because we can't screw around with this. I'd rather throw Turkey out and get these two people in.
Okay, so it's pretty funny. You mentioned I'm meeting the Turkish ambassador today. Here's what I'd like. I'd get like Finland and Sweden in, right? That makes us stronger, NATO. Turkey's got some concerns about the YPG, PPK presence. I get that. Turkey wants 72 F-16s. I'd like to give them to a NATO ally. But Turkey's making a mistake of holding hostage Finland and Sweden's admission to NATO. They need to let that go. I want Turkey to be a better ally. I want them to be in our orbit, not China, not Russia. So we're at an inflection point with Turkey. I'm going to meet with the ambassador today, and I'm going to make the argument. I'm all in the camp providing you with fighter weapons to protect Turkey and to make you a more relevant partner to NATO. But you're going to have to understand that Finland and Sweden are in the crosshairs of Russia, and now it's time to make the NATO stronger.
Please tell them for me, this is not a below-the-fold New York Times story. This is a national interest story, and there are lots of people watching Turkey be a jerk. And
I think the reason they're coming to talk to me is because I'm sort of echoing some things that you said. Listen, Turkey is a Muslim nation. It's the only Muslim nation in NATO. They're a problematic ally, but I still want them to be an ally. They got a problem on their Syrian border. The YPG Kurds are seen by Turkey as the same as the PKK. We made a mistake by over-arming elements that were bad in the eyes of Turkey in Syria, but we sort of had to, I guess. I understand their concerns about Syria, but that's no reason to exclude Finland and Sweden.
Senator, a couple of political questions. Governor of New Hampshire was on yesterday, Chris Sununu. He said if the Democrats follow through with the plan to make your state the first state in the nation, New Hampshire will become a red state in the fall of 2024. So I'm ambivalent about this. I'd like them to shoot themselves in the foot. But you ran for president once. Right. What do you think about the Democrats' plan to start with South Carolina? It makes no sense.
Well, it makes sense in this regard. You're rewarding Jim Clyburn, right? You have a large African-American population in the Democratic primary. So Jim Clyburn helped Biden win South Carolina that put him on the path to the presidency. So Biden's trying to reward him. I think it does create a problem for the Democratic Party in New Hampshire because it's a northeastern state that can flip. So you got a battle inside the Democratic Party. Those who want the African-American voice to be heard first and loudest, that would be South Carolina, not New Hampshire.
It's just they're going to lose in 2024, so whatever they do.
I hope so.
Senator, are you endorsing Ronna McDaniel for re-election as chairman of the RNC? I have.
Yeah. Okay. I think, listen, we got to learn from 2022 and 2020, but Ronna was there. She stood up. Listen, this idea that there's no place in Washington for the voice of the unborn, Democrats are trying to basically change the laws so that all pro-life laws in the states go away, that we have a national law allowing abortion on demand up to the moment of birth. That is barbaric. Ronna was there. She's been solid. She raises the money. I think she's very competent. I support her.
They're also going to release the debate rules, and I've been lobbying for a couple of things. I want them to start early, not late, and I want to run everyone. That's not going to happen, but they should start early, not late. You went through the debate thing. Should we start earlier and later, and should we ever do the kiddie table nonsense again?
No, I don't like that. When you got a crowded field, I understand. Got to have some cuts, but I hated the kiddie table thing. Give everybody a voice sooner rather than later, more rather than less.
What about moderators from our team or from the other team?
No, I think in the primary process, it should be used to have conservatives from different points of view. You represent a point of view. There are other people who have a different point of view, should challenge the aspirants to be the Republican nominee, and then you have a general election debate would be quite different. But the idea of having, liberals moderate a primary, a debate designed to pick...
Well, you should have been in those rooms with CNN for those 4 debates, Senator. You would not believe how left-wing it is. Let me close by asking you...
Stupid.
It's crazy. Let me close by asking you about the debt limit. Leader McConnell said we're not going to default. We're not going to default. But right. The Republicans can win stuff. Obama negotiated in 2011 when he faced a new Republican House led by Boehner. Biden says he won't negotiate. But first, Republicans have to agree on what we want. Is that process moving along?
I hope so. So let's break it down. It's unreasonable to not address the structural problems of the debt when you have a chance to do so. It's unrealistic for Democrats to expect the Republican Party not to try to turn this around, and it's unsustainable position not to negotiate with the Republicans. Here's what Republicans need to do pretty quickly. Find common ground as to what we want. I will not raise the debt ceiling. with my vote unless we have some real reforms to address the structural problems we have as a nation regarding our debt. I don't want to default, but I don't want to ignore the problems that are going to make us Greece and other bankrupt countries if we don't change course.
Now, LS Items this morning, the Substack that I subscribe to, that's a news aggregator and it's fair, points out the Congressional Budget Office said by 2033, Social Security's broke. Now, I don't think that's going to impact me, though I'll be eligible by that point. I'll be taking benefits, but it's going to impact everyone who's 55. Can't we do something like raise the retirement age to a realistic number, like 67 and a half, and add a few months every year?
It's funny, 67, now, and Ronald Reagan and O'Neill did it. You need to get Bill Cassidy on your show. He's got a proposal that would structurally fix Social Security. We need to raise the age limit because we live longer. We need to probably revisit the cap in terms of contributions going into the system. You could fix Social Security pretty quickly if you had the political will. Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill did that, so I'm hoping that there'll be a Republican-Democratic effort to shore up Social Security, because for a decade from now, you're either going to have cut benefits or raise taxes because the flow of money is insufficient to pay the benefits without change.
But last question, I did get agreement from Chip Roy. Non-discretionary defense spending is on the table, but we cannot cut defense spending. We have to raise it. Do you agree with that, Senator?
Yeah, 7% inflation has been pretty much the norm in the last year. If you don't increase the defense budget above 7%, you're actually cutting into the force's ability to defend the nation. This last bill that nobody liked, including me, had a 10% increase in defense spending. That's why I voted for it. A continuing resolution is a death blow to the Defense Department. We need to keep defense spending up with inflation. The amount of money spent to defend the nation, GDP-wise, is around 3%, which is on the historical low average since World War II. Now's not the time to go cheap on defense.
No, we need the Columbia class. We got to do the re-up of the B-21. We got lots to do. Senator Graham, always a pleasure talking to you. I did note that you didn't come to breakfast when I was the breakfast speaker. I noted that. I took attendance, and Lindsey Graham wasn't there, so I guess you just listened to me every morning.
I love to hear you, but I almost miss everyone's breakfast.
Senator, always good to talk to you. Lindsey Graham, be well.
Bye.